Welcome back, everybody. Now that we have talked a little bit about what terms are and what like terms are, we're going to talk about combining them to simplify expressions. So our question for today is, what is an expression and how is it simplified? Okay, so we have an example of an expression down here, and there's going to be two things that we're going to be doing to simplify. We're going to make sure to get it in the simplest possible form. We're going to make sure we don't have any like terms because we're going to combine those together, and we're going to make sure there's no parentheses. We're not going to deal with parentheses here in this first part. We're just going to talk about like terms, but the next time around, we're going to talk about parentheses, and we're going to bring back something from Unit 1 that we've seen before. All right, so to simplify the expression, one thing we'll be doing is combining like terms. So if I look at this expression, I color-coded them a little bit to show you where our like terms are. Okay, so 3x and negative 2x are like terms because they're both right here because they have both the same variable. Okay, 7y and 9y are like terms. Negative 2z is the only thing with a z, so there's nothing that's alike here and nothing that's like this 10. Okay, so I really have two pairs of like terms here, the 3x and the negative 2x, and the 7y and the negative 9y. So when I combine those together, let's start with the x's first. When you think about if you have 3x is 3 times x, right? And negative 2x is negative 2 times x. So you can think about it kind of the same way. You can kind of think of the x as like a label. So if you think, well, if I have 3 books and I got rid of 2 books, how many books would I have left? I'd have 1, right? If you have 3 x's and you get rid of 2 x's, you're going to have 1 x left. Okay, so anytime you're combining like terms, what you're going to do is you're going to take the coefficients here and you're going to add them together. So 3 plus negative 2, remember 3 is the coefficient here, negative 2 is the coefficient here, 3 plus negative 2 is 1. So 3x minus 2x leaves me just 1x left. Okay, I could write 1x, but I don't need the 1. I could just write it as an x. Okay. Now, I'm hoping this makes sense from something that we saw in Unit 1, and that thing is the distributive property. So what I'm saying here is that 3x minus 2x is the same thing as 3 minus 2 times x. Okay, does that remind you of something you've seen before? I'm hoping it does. This was called the distributive property when we studied it in Unit 1. Remember, the idea with the distributive property is if I had something in parentheses being added or subtracted, and then something being multiplied outside, I could distribute that part being multiplied to each part inside. Okay, so 3x minus 2x is the same thing as 3 minus 2 times x. Okay, so that's what kind of lets us just add and subtract our coefficients. So that's how I combine the x's. If I look at the y's, I have 7y and negative 9y. Okay, so if I add those coefficients, 7 plus negative 9 gives me negative 2. So I could write plus negative 2y. I'll do that for now. I can write that simpler. I'll do that in a minute. Okay, so I combined my y's. Z is all by itself because there's no other z's to combine that with, so that stays the same. And same with the number. Okay, so you don't necessarily be able to combine all your terms, but any like terms you want to combine together. Okay. So I have x plus negative 2y minus 2z plus 10. So in terms of simplifying, and we dealt with this a little bit with integers as well, if you have a plus negative, the simpler way to write that is just minus. So x minus 2y minus 2z plus 10. It's great to turn it to adding when we're working with it, so we can use our rules for adding positives and negatives. But when we're given our final answer, it's easier to say I lost $2 than I gained negative $2. All right, so we'll just say minus. That's what subtraction is for. It's for adding opposites. Okay, so that would be the simplified form of this. Okay, we don't have any like terms anymore because we combined them, and we don't have any parentheses. All right, so let's try that here. If I look for like terms, this has an x, this has a y, this has a z, and this has a 10. Okay, that tells me none of these are like terms. So one of the things that people are going to be combined to do is they're going to be tempted to do is try to combine things that aren't like terms and do something like that and try to like put those together and get an XY term. You do not want to do that. Okay. If there are no like terms, leave it alone. It's already simplified. Okay. All right. If I look at this one, I see an X term and I got an X term here. So those I can combine. Again, I have subtraction. I'm going to think about that as adding the opposite. Okay. So erase that. Got a little sloppy. So I have negative 4x and negative 10x. So if I add those together, negative 4 plus negative 10, it's a negative plus a negative. Hopefully remember that gives me a bigger negative. So I get negative 14x. Okay, there's my x terms together. For my constants, I have negative 1 and positive 6. So negative 1 plus 6, remembering those rules, is 5. So 14x, negative 14x plus 5 is my answer here. Now, to show you that's the same, let's come up with any number for x. Okay, I'm going to test it. I'm going to test it by putting it into here and putting the same number here, and I'll show you we get the same answer because these expressions are doing the same thing. Let's say x is 2. I'm just picking that at random. This will work with any number you pick for x. All right, if you plug in 2 for x, you would have negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8, minus 1, minus 10 times 2, which is 20, plus 6. Okay. So negative 8 and minus 1 is negative 9, minus 20 is negative 29, plus 6 is negative 23. Hey, you can confirm the math on your own if you'd like, but that's what that adds up to. Okay, so if I plug 2 in for here, let's see what happens. Negative 14 times 2 is negative 28, plus 5 is negative 23. Right, it got me the same answer because these expressions are equivalent. They're doing the same thing. This is just a simpler way of writing it. Right? So taking a number, any number, multiplying it by negative 4, subtracting 1, subtracting 10 times the number, and then adding 6, that whole complicated process does the same thing as if you multiply the number by negative 14 and then added 5. A little simpler. Okay. All right, let's look at this next one here. All right, so I see I have more than one 8 term, so I can combine those. All right, so I have 8a, negative 6a, and negative 5a. So I want to do 8 plus negative 6 plus negative 5. So 8 plus negative 6 is 2. 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. So I add all those coefficients, I get negative 3a. Right? You might be able to tell there's a reason we spend a lot of time on the positive negative rules at the start of the year. They're going to come up. Okay? If I look at these other numbers, 4 and 3, those are also like terms. They're constants. So I can add those together. 4 plus 3 is 7. So negative 3a plus 7 is what I get. That is simplified. All right, so why don't you pause here for a minute and see if you can do these on your own, then come back and we'll make sure we got the same answers. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got these for your answers. First one, I just had 2 y terms. I add those together. Remember, this y is 1y. So 4 plus 1 is 5. If you have 4 y's and you add another y, you get 5 y's. Okay, here's something kind of interesting happened. 7x plus negative 7x. Well, 7 plus negative 7 is 0. Right? If we had 7x and we got rid of all 7x's, we don't have any x's left. So I don't need to write like 0x. I can just leave it off. It can just go away entirely. So the x's cancel each other out. And add a negative 2 plus 6, which is 4. All right, here These two combine into the 2n, and then I had a 6. In case you didn't notice this, it's kind of customary to write, if you have a part with a variable and a part without, to write the part without the variable, the constant, at the end. So write the variable part first. Okay, that's how you'll see me write it. All right, here the 2g and the negative 8g gave me negative 6g. Negative 3 and 11 gave me 8. Okay, so hopefully those are the answers you got as well. All right, so we're going to pause this video here. We're going to come back on the next one and throw in what happens if we got some parentheses to deal with.